but he's also then put to the weapon, subject to the Roman scourge and cross, where he would be killed, cut off, het, put into the tomb. And tet, the big round stone, rolled in front of it, yod, the Roman seal put on it. Yet another way to read that, he laid himself down, vav, the bridge, because we were cut off, Zion, from het, the kingdom of Yahweh, because we had betrayed him, so that tet, we could enter in and become his possession, and yod, by his hand, he did this. Who? He, the yod, the hand of the Creator. 1 through 10, the minion of letters, the 10 letters establishing a legal document, a legal quorum of voice. Those are the first 10 letters. Kaf, as a suffix to those 10, it means you or yours. Here, this is extended to you and yours. Kaf is also a gift, a covering, an open hand, lines of instruction. Lamed means teach and learn. It's an authority. This is what we should teach and learn. Lamed mem means unto them, or for them, for their regard. Yod Kaf Lamed means he will have the capacity and power to contain it all. If you don't do the Yod, and you look at Kaf Lamed Mem, it's where we get kind of the word for calamity, which is brought to silence and ruin and shame. So you put your hand to teaching and learning what he says, you will succeed and prosper and have the capacity to contain it all. And if we don't put our hand to it, we will bring to stillness, ruin, defeat, and shame. Mem. This has been hidden, but you might say the seeds of his truth will be. Mem is also a womb besides water, so you have his seed of truth planted within you. Noon, it sprouts to life. It's imparted to you his vitality, his life from like a lightning bolt coming from somewhere else, bringing the energy into this domain. It'll light up the life that was otherwise inaccessible, taking on this thing unto eternity. Samak ayin pei. The picture of the samak is also the picture of the vine and branches. Yeshua said, I'm the vine, you're the branches. Your job is to bear fruit. How do you bear fruit? Because you going back again, Yod has to do with his kingdom. Moshe said, I put before you life and death, choose life. You choose life. Yes, I want part of this kingdom. You step in. This is Mishkan pattern, by the way. You then step in, Kaf Lamed, all. Kaf Lamed means all. Lamed Kaf means to you. When he said, go, Daniel, he said, Lakah, Daniel. So this is what's been given to us to teach and learn. So we learn these instructions, Kaf Lamed. Memnun, from within us, it sprouts and takes life as we nurture it and take it to heart with a good attitude, because, of course, once he gave his instructions, the Israelites had a bad attitude, bitterly grumbling, complaining. So we take his seed of life, his instructions, and with a good attitude, we nurture it and develop it as a pregnant woman would the seed which is in her. And then Yeshua said, I'm the vine, you're the branches, so now bear good fruit. The samak is a picture of the trellis supporting the load, engineered to take the stresses of sailing without breaking the ship. The same model, bear fruit. Ayin is a picture of the fruit, but it's also an ayin, a picture of the judgment, which is to say, I'm going to test and evaluate the fruit, refine you and test you and try you to make sure that what you're doing is correct. Pei is the mouth which eats the fruit, but Pei is also the mouth of instruction from the Messiah that tells us if we're on track, that counsels with us, that guides us, that keeps us doing the right thing as we sukkot, as we fellowship together. Or Zadi, then there's the promise of the resurrection, sprouting back to life. Not only after this life, but the sprouting back to life of your individual life now, because his words are life and they're quick, and you start learning his language and you take upon his instructions and something comes back to life within you. You don't have to wait until you die and are resurrected, but that's the same model. Kuf then means, it's also the model for Israel coming back, being restored to its preeminent stature, I believe. Kuf means after this. Well, after Yeshua sprouted back to life, what happened? He hung around for 40 days, went up. The word kumi with a kuf, our letter Q, means to arise and go up. And the similar word means to be planted and fixed. So the angel said, oh, he's coming back, he's coming back. So kuf is the long reach in the future, he who went up is coming back. It's the same story. Israel was kicked out of the land, and Yahweh said, you guys get to come back when you do what I said to do, which is come back to choose life and learn his ways. Resh is the preeminent one, the exalted man, the head, which literally means is a picture of Yeshua coming back. He who was entombed, Het, resurrected, Zadi, rose up, Kuf, coming back. And when he comes back, Kuf, which also looks like a sickle, Resh Shin Tav means a net, trap, or snare, or to gather up your stuff. He said, I'm going to come back and take you away, right? You gather up your stuff, harvest his own. That's a picture right there, the last 4 letters. But also, Shin is teeth and fire. Our shining Elyon. He, El Shaddai, the Almighty, to vanquish his foes, to redeem and restore his own. Tav, well, just like I said, the terms of the covenant accomplished. Tav. That's the end of the matter that he started out of. So here, we have on this paper, we'll sing this song and then we'll take a break. On that paper I handed you earlier, on the back of it, right, has this picture on the face. On the back of it is a song that we'll all sing this song together for Colleen. Hey Colleen, we're going to do this for you. Colleen, we're going to sing the song for you. So it's do the tune of Itsy Bitty Spider, because that's just this, it's just this incremental little ditty. And so this is telling you the meanings of the letters is this as this more esoteric meaning, not the surface meaning. So I'll sing it through once. And if you guys want to join in, if you get the flavor of it, we can sing it through a second time if you want. Here we go. Here we go, Colleen. Aleph is the plan that Abba purposed in his heart. Bet is the container of all he would impart. Gimel is the sent one to retrieve us home again, to enter through the door. The Dalet. Hey, look! He's the Vav, man! Cut off, perfect yet, the Zion, one of sevenness. Selah. Stop and think about that. Zion cut off, Sabbath day cut off, his people cut off, Yeshua cut off. One of 7. 7 is the vow. Het is for our safekeeping, sealed by Tet like a wedding ring. Yod, his hand, who formed my hand, to hold on to his Kaf, which is Torah, Torah, Torah. Our regard reveals the heart. Lamading, teach and learn, so that from Mem, a blessed noon, restart. Samik, Ayin, Pei, Shema, Shomer, together one. Zadi stands alone, though all Israel shall become. After Kuf, our noble Resh, exalted in the sky. Shin, our shining Elyon, Yahweh El Shaddai. The Aleph Tav, accomplished and completed as he said. The one word left untranslated, the one we all reject. Still the offer yet remains, Chaim Era Olam, which means live forever, for the simple Brit of love and death is Aleph Bet, his song, Hashir Shirim, the Song of Songs. It's all right there. And this is the days when the illiterate can read in spite of what the clergy has told us. And you guys just proved it. Let's take a break.
So he still has it now?
Yeah, is there anything? He says he went home for something, but he looks terrible. I'm just wondering if you would.
It's okay. I just want to talk to you for a minute when you're done.
Okay, if there anything you could do, talk to him right now? Here it comes. Okay, come on. How long is it going?
This one should always red light on. Oh. I better go and check the level. I'll check the level. Sorry. They didn't have the real stuff. They had the brown water. Yeah. Okay, try again. Sorry. You're living in New East, right? Or several bowls of dirty. Yeah. Oh, I know. Then, okay. I just. I thought you were talking about another photograph to you. Maybe just a little late. That should all work now. Hello, you on? Is it recording?
Yep, we hear
Okay.
you.
Okay. Yeah, he wanted to do a question and answer.
Where'd he go? Oh,
So the
How did your Weltanschauung change?
the who?
Weltanschauung.
Wilton?
German for worldview.
Oh, zeitgeist. You know what? That's one of
That's a little different.
So how did my worldview change? Well, there's a long story to some of these things. So I don't know if you want the short story or the long story, but I was actually, this is the Vineyard Christian Fellowship here. I was actually going to the Vineyard down in Portland at the time, and we bumped into someone who had a, what do you call it, Torah study. I didn't even know the guy, but he had an advertisement. He was a tree guy, that we needed to ask a question of. He had said on his answer machine, "Blessings to you in the name of Yeshua the Messiah." So, is that still on? Your lens is closed. Anyway, just to say, the simple thing on a guy's answer machine, "Blessings to you in the name of Yeshua the Messiah." And my wife thought, well, that's Jewish, kind of, sort of. That's weird. So she called the guy up, and it turns out that he had been Church of God, but he was teaching a Torah study down in Portland area, Saturdays. And I had a friend who was, neighbor's Seventh-day Adventist, was like, yeah, whatever. He'd been bugging me about keeping the Sabbath day, and it was immaterial. It just wasn't an issue. But anyway, so I went to go visit, or my wife did. She went to visit this guy's Bible study, and she thought, well, this is kind of interesting. You might check this out. So I go down there. Their meetings lasted from 10 in the morning till 10 at night. But the interesting thing is, you didn't have to go the whole time. There wasn't a beginning and an official end, and show up whenever you want, leave whenever you want. The guy would be talking, you could raise your hand, and you could even disagree with the guy, or say, hey, what does this mean? It's like, wow, that's almost like a school, a classroom, a seminar, a college class type of thing, which I really appreciated. And so it's like, wow, and the guy is just basically reading the Torah, first 5 books, Genesis to Deuteronomy, and then again the next year, Genesis to Deuteronomy, and then the next year. And so I came intermittently, and I'd still keep going to the Sunday church that I was going to. There was Vineyard, and there's also this other one that was an independent, very similar to Vineyard. And then my brother was going with some friends of his to Nigeria with Wycliffe Bible translators that put out what they call the Jesus Film, which is the Book of Luke, translated into numerous different languages. So they took this Jesus Film and they got a video projector and a generator and a Land Cruiser and a bed sheet, and they go out to the middle of Nigeria, they put up this bed sheet and they show the film. Thousands of people showed up who've never seen a movie, never heard the Bible, never been to church, don't know anything about anything. These natives living out in the bush, and they show this movie of Jesus, Book of Luke. And after the movie, they don't know what's coming. They don't know he's going to be crucified. They don't know he's going to be risen from the dead. I mean, this is all a surprise. They've probably never seen a movie. And furthermore, he is speaking their language, because Nigeria has like 500 different languages. Every city speaks a different language, pretty much. But they have this commercial trade language, Iziri, and so they were speaking Iziri in the movie. So there's like, this guy's speaking our language. It connected with them. Anyway, he came back and was telling me they have a big problem. Thousands of people would respond to this movie and say, well, now what do we do? What do we do? Well, go to church. There is no church. Read the Bible. There's no Bible. Well, read a Bible verse. Read a tract. No, they can't read. They don't have an alphabet. They didn't have a language to read. Nothing. They had nothing to do. And they didn't have any money by which to send a guy to seminary, and they didn't have anything. And actually, within like 10 years later, they had figured out an alphabet, they had taught some people, they had trained some pastors, and now things are different. However, now I don't know if you've heard of Boko Haram. That means, Boca is like boca in Spanish mouth, and hara is actually a Hebrew word meaning evil. They say anything that comes out of the West is an evil mouth. And so the very people that my brother, his friends, that he was working with, teaching them about the New Testament, these Boko Haram guys wake them up in the middle of the night by lighting their house on fire, and then they come out and chop them up with machetes. And many of his friends have been killed. That's what they're doing in Nigeria. And it all has to do with the politics of oil and the British authority and on and on. But nevertheless, he said, well, what do we do to give these people? Because they say, hey, we want to respond to the film, we want to ask Jesus in our heart and have our sins forgiven and go to heaven forever, but what do we do now? It's like, we got to get to the next village. See you later. They go to the next village, same thing happens. The people respond, and what do? You got to learn how to read. See you later, we got to go to the next village. And this was stacking up, and so now there's tens of thousands of people with nothing. Nothing. And then he came home and was telling me about it, and I said, it's actually Yahweh's problem. These people that are responding to Yahweh, they're his sheep, his problem. And so, here, let's just pray. Yahweh, please give the Nigerians something. They watch the book of Luke, they want to respond, they want eternal life. Give them something. What do you tell them? Well, within a couple weeks, the guy at this Torah study was starting to teach on the fact, which I didn't know, but the Hebrew traditional Jewish wedding ceremony, he was saying, was staged to or correlated to the 7 festivals. Passover, unleavened bread, Shavuot, which is counting up to Pentecost, and then Yom Teruah, Feast of Trumpets, Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, Sukkot, the week of tabernacling, and then Shemini Atzeret. And of course, as a Christian, I had heard the story about, Jesus comes down here and he finds someone who wants to be betrothed to him, the bride of Christ, and then he goes away to prepare a place for him, and then he's going to come back with his friends and pick them up and go in and close the door on some that don't have any oil. What does that all mean? Oh, but it's like the traditional Jewish wedding ceremony. Then it's like, well, okay, it was worth listening to. But see, it had been a couple years. This is 2004. I'd been going there since 2001, so 3 times through the Torah. That didn't go every week, but you read the Torah. You just sit there and read it. What's called a parashah, or like chapters, only it's not the actual chapters, they're collections of other chapters, which the Jews just read traditionally. The parashah reading. So you just read, and there's commentary, and he's discussing. That's a lot of teaching, sometimes 12 hours, but they had a time or break for an hour or two for lunch type of a thing, and people could raise questions and whatever. It was pretty loose in a sense. But anyway, so I had just read 3 times through about the tabernacle. In Hebrew, it's called the Mishkan. Shakan is where we get the word Shekinah glory. It means presence of neighboring, of being with. In Greek, it was translated to the word taverno. The B and the V, like in Spanish and in Hebrew, are the same letter, so it's where we get the word tabernacle. So to tabernacle is the taverno, which is where we also get the word tavern. We think, oh, tavern, that's where they have beer and pizza. The same word, that's the neighborhood tavern where the locals get together to just hang out. That's the word Mishkan, which is where Yahweh Shekins or Shekinah, his presence, neighbors with us just to hang out. That's the Mishkan. So the Mishkan in the wilderness was the big white fence, and then the barbecue grill, and then the laver, and then inside the tent was a lamp, a table with some bread, the incense, and then in the special set-apart place was the Ark of the Covenant. That's it. But in reading about it, and then reading about the 7 festivals, and then hearing about the traditional Jewish wedding ceremony patterned after the festivals, my mind locked on to the fact that it's all the same pattern. And it happens to correlate to the pattern of the 7 days of creation. So the 7 days of creation, thematically, are the exact same pattern as the 7 festivals, which is the exact same pattern as the Mishkan, architecturally, you might say, the pieces of it, which is the exact same pattern as the Jewish wedding ceremony. And then thinking about it, it was the same pattern as the Beatitudes. And then thinking about it some more, the Garden of Eden kind of laid out to that same pattern. And thinking about it some more, it's like, well, wait a minute, what about the priest's garments? What about the Lord's Prayer? Hey, what about the 7 churches of the book of Revelation? And everything seems to fit. So then I realized, it seems like there is a message in the pattern. Not just the message in the message, not just the narrative that what you read, but actually the pattern itself embodied a message. So you can look at the human frame and say, okay, 2 legs, 2 arms, a torso and a head. What's the message? I don't know the message. Well, I did some work for an osteopathic, doctor of osteopathy, I believe it's called. And he was then describing how the skull was designed as a message, you know, reflection and the curve of the skull and the curve of the inside of the mouth and the 2 eyes. I can't repeat what he said. It was many years ago and I forget, and I wish he would have made it more clear. But it was astounding, the fact that he could read an intentional design in the human skeletal arrangement. It was amazing. And I don't know if he thought it up himself or he got it in his studies, or whether it was a Rudolf Steiner thing, because he had studied Steiner, which is, to some people, you know, that's a theosophy, which is a Luciferic thing, and it's like, well, whatever. The point is, there's something that you can read in a pattern, not just that the pattern is an outline form. And what I saw was that there was a message in the pattern. So here's the simple message. Well, to finish the story, I thought, wow, this is the answer to the prayer. You got to give this to the Nigerians. And I tried to tell my brother, and he couldn't understand what I said. And I went to he took off to go back to Nigeria, and I went to the assistant pastor of his church and say, hey, email this to him. You got a computer? No, we already have a curriculum. No, you don't. That's the problem. You see, my brother, you don't have a curriculum. You don't have anything to give these guys. Get out of here. So then I thought, man, I got to make this more clear. And it was a year later, because I started looking for all the places where this pattern was. It was a year later that I saw that the pattern was actually in the alphabet. And I realized, well, if the pattern's in the alphabet, then the alphabet's a message. Furthermore, I was taking, previously I'd taken some studies in film animation. Is it down at UCLA? And as film animation, you ever seen Flipbook, you know, where you draw a little picture and it moves? And I started thinking, what if every one of these pictures, every one of these letters, which are pictures, was a concept that you could flip like a flip book and see it move as an animated sequence? What would it look like? What would it be saying? Of course, this is an ox turning into a house, turning into a camel, a door, a window, a nail, a weapon, a fence. That doesn't make a flip book, right? They have to be incremental changes. So I was tending to look at it, what if you conceptually saw the incremental changes between an aleph and a bet? What's happening? What if this is an animated sequence, and bet to Gimel, and Gimel to Dalet, and Dalet to Hey? And I went over it and over and over in my mind, trying to figure out what is going on. Actually, what that is, right through this section here where it says meta, meaning change in place or condition, that's kind of what that is. It's kind of like if you were to describe the white space between the 2 black letters, there's this notion, this Kabbalistic term, I didn't study Kabbalah, but I just know they have this term, white fire compared to black fire. If the black fire is the letters, what's the white fire? The in between the letters, like reading in between the lines. How do you do that? What does that mean? So if you were to say, what has to happen to an aleph before it becomes bet? If aleph was 1 and bet was 2, and if you're going to say what incremental changes do you make for 1 to become 2, well, you say 1.1, decimal point 10, decimal system, you add 10. 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, so forth, you get 1.9, 1.10. Well, that's how 1 becomes 2. But as an idea, how does the aleph become a bet? And that's where I started thinking, what's the relationship between aleph and bet? What really is an aleph? What really is a bet? So forth with all the other letters. It's considerable, meaning that not only there's a lot, but you are able to consider it. There's stuff there to think about. So when I saw that there was the message in the pattern, and that the pattern, there's a message in the alphabet, then it was a matter of saying, well, what is this message? And then I saw that every time I tried to nail it down to a small thing, it was actually really, really, really big. And it was almost like if you were, say, out in the woods, and you saw a tree trunk log and you sat down on it, and then all of a sudden you felt something go, move. What did I feel? Was that, there's something in this tree trunk? And then you realize this isn't a tree trunk, but it's actually a body of a giant snake. Actually, somebody I know was out in the woods, and what they thought was a pile of brush turned out to be a buffalo that stood up, that they were actually kind of relieving themselves on. It's like, yeah. Down in Yellowstone, I think, or somewhere. But the point is, you think, oh, these are just some letters, and you feel this pulse of life, like this heartbeat. It's like, wait a minute. There's something in this. There's something to this. There's something more to this than just a string of letters. And once you start getting a sense of the life that's in this, it's like, what are we on to here? What? It's just a pile of letters. So anyway, that was the nature of the discovery of what this stuff is. And here, let me tell you the simplicity of the Mishkan pattern here. Okay? Out in the darkness, lining up with the Beatitude, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. That guy who's riding around in his limousine with his fancy suit and all the money that he wants, is he poor in spirit? Maybe. Does he know it? Is he trying to change anything? Not necessarily. The rich young ruler, hey, I got everything I need. How do I get eternal life? Sell everything you need. Ah, come on, man. Really? Do I have to give away everything? Sell it and then give the money to the poor? It's like, oh, really? That's how I get eternal life? Really? Is eternal life contingent on poverty? Not necessarily, but Yeshua said, if you want what you don't have, give away what you do have. Oh, gosh. Is that the way it works? If you're aware of your poverty and aware of the terms of how to get what you don't have, which is, blessed are the poor in spirit, why? For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. To them is offered the kingdom of heaven. They will be given an insight into the kingdom of heaven that you won't get otherwise. So if you face this place of poverty, represented by the darkness here, he said, you're blessed. Blessed, because yours is the kingdom of heaven. Unto you is offered the door of life, that if people have no need, they lack nothing, they might not be looking for the door of life. So all of a sudden I realized that fit the same thing as Yahweh standing there and saying, you guys were in the bondage of slavery in Egypt, and I took you out from there, and I called you my own, and now I'm offering you my words of life, but I'm going to be the boss. You're not just on your own recognizance, I'm now to be your boss. So now you're under my allegiance. And that's the same theme as saying, there was darkness, and Yahweh said, let there be light, and he separated the light from the darkness, and he called the light good. It lines up there with day one, and the first festival was Passover. He used Passover to get his people out of Egypt and say, now I own you. You're my people. And that was a picture of the big white fence that you weren't allowed to just walk right into the Mishkan. If you had been in contact with the dead, you were unclean. So you had to go to the priest, the red heifer sacrifice, its ashes put on you somehow ceremonially, and then you were allowed to come in. You had to be decontaminated from your being among the dead in order to enter the fence. That's the thematic parallel. Just like the Beatitude, blessed are the poor in spirit, yours is the kingdom of heaven. You are in darkness and bondage, here's the kingdom of Yahweh. Instead of overlords beating you, taskmasters without hope, here is the epitome of all hope in life. Just like Passover, just like let there be light in the face of the darkness. Can you see the connection there, the thematic parallels? That's what came to mind. Then the next one, just inside the fence was the altar of sacrifice. So the Beatitude says, blessed are they who mourn, for they shall be comforted. So why should that line up with coming into the kingdom? Why should you mourn? See, outside where everything is bad, you can grumble, but mourning is a little different. What is it? If you come into the kingdom, all of a sudden, you see what exists that's real that you never saw before. And you might sit there and say, how many years did I waste? What about my friends that are outside? There's a verse where it says that Yahweh tells Israel that we crushed his anguished heart. Israel, the word for anguish is crushed and broken. We anguished his heart that he had a dream of all these ideas of what it would be like for him to be our Elohim, and we would be his people, and we, Israel, his favorite people, the apple of his eye, dear to his heart, crushed them and broke his dreams and just smashed them with absolute disregard. And I hear still people saying, Christians on the internet saying, the Torah is loathsome, abominable, despicable, letters, words of death. Every hateful thing, every hateful adjective is what they describe with the Torah. Why? What don't they see? How have we, supposedly his people, just wrecked his plans and anguished his heart? Well, we don't see. We don't know. Well, what's the matter with him? He's God. He's everything wonderful, love, blah, blah, blah. And if we have to monitor and temper our attitudes, why doesn't he have to temper his attitude? What business does he have of having an anguished heart? Hey, be happy. Don't you know? You step into this, into his zone, where the Torah is his words of truth and life and light and everything rightly ordered, and all of a sudden you see that those attitudes that I just expressed are so horribly depraved, wrong. That's what causes you to mourn. When you step inside his place where there's light and you see what's really going on, and it just breaks your heart. But he said, blessed are you who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Because it's a place of comfort. Because he also says, and here's the truth, and here's my compassion, and here's my tender mercies. Even though you guys crushed my heart, ruined my dreams, here is everything. And that's the same place that we were told there is nothing. What's going on? And then the next beatitude lining up with the labor says, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the meek. So you come in and you realize there's nothing in here to be proud about. There's nothing to think yourself is so much good about, because there's nothing so much good, and we have all ruined his stuff, and we have all despised his stuff. We have all been told how bad it is and told others how bad it is. So in the alphabet song there, you know, about the Aleph Tav, the one word left untranslated, which means we have no idea what it really means, and yet we all have rejected it. Yeshua is rejected, the Torah is rejected, Yahweh's kingdom has been rejected, and it's like, gee, where's the blessings? And we haven't got a clue what's really going on until we step inside his mind, his heart, the light within the meeting place, and realize it's a whole different world. It's a whole different reality. We were never told about this. In fact, we were specifically told there's nothing there, you can't, you shouldn't, and if you go there to try to find out what's there, you're an abomination, you're profaning and blaspheming him, and every counsel was pushed against us to keep us from coming in. But fortunately, all we have to do is say, hey, I'd like to come into the kingdom. Yes, I choose life, please. What's going on in here? Ooh. And you're confronted with, like the barbecue grill, the Torah. That's his instructions. It's inside the fence. You can't read it outside. You can't say, here, I'm going to keep the Sabbath day and then enter. You don't even know what it means to keep the Sabbath day unless you're already inside. So outside in the darkness here can't be the prerequisite requirement that you obey a bunch of rules and laws to be good enough or to be special enough or religious enough so that you're allowed to enter. We're allowed to enter only because the blood of Messiah cleansed us from our sins, our iniquities, and our rebellion, thus allowing us the privilege of entering. And that's where, lining up with the barbecue grill, we learn his instructions. This is blue, like blue, the Creator's hand. Here's the kingdom of the hand, the kingdom of the Creator, the letter Yod. Hey, the expression of the Creator, the Torah, lining up with purple. Royal decrees, the purple, the royalty. The 4 colors that were on the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the embroidery is blue, purple, red, and then white linen, there are some gold threads. Blue, purple, red, white with gold threads. There's the color, the pattern. So if blue represents the Yod, meaning the color of the Creator, the maker of the heavens and the earth, the sky being blue, cops, the authority of the policeman wearing blue is a generic model. Hey, the royal words of his authority lining up with the Torah. Hey, this is what it is. Vav, the red man, Adam means red, Dam, Dalet Mem, DM means red. So Adam literally means I will bleed. Okay, so you have Adam being red lining up with the Messiah. So purple is red and blue mixed together. So the Torah is the Father's will expressed in the Son. Blue, purple, red. Is that what he's saying? Can you analyze these colors a little bit? What about the white? White linen, representing robes of righteousness. What is robes of righteousness? Us doing the Torah instructions of the purple, the hay, and it's also what Yeshua modeled. And so Samachai and Pei lining up with these, lining up with the, let me back up a little bit. If this lines up with unleavened bread, the barbecue grill, what does unleavened bread mean? Right after Passover. Passover was on the 14th day of the first month, the 15th day for a week is unleavened bread. Eat unleavened bread for a week. Funny little crackers with holes and stripes. Kind of like the crucifixion, right? His body was whipped and striped and punched holes into, pierced and striped. And then he says, talk about these things. And so your children will say, why are we eating these funny crackers and talking about these things? And then you'll tell them the story of the Exodus and the Torah being given. And he said, and so the Torah will be in your mouth. As you speak, and the Torah's in your mouth, that's fulfilling the commandment to speak of these things. He made it very simple. So by keeping Passover and unleavened bread, you're fulfilling the commands. So the fact that the commands line up with the Kaf and Lamed, which is like the lines of instruction, and the shepherd's staff authority to teach and learn repeatedly, which is year by year, it all lines up perfectly. The purple, the royal decrees. Mem is a womb, and Noon is that which lives in the womb and jumps out, right? So it's the fish in the water. Noon being fish, Mem being water. So it has to do with birthing. So the Messiah being born as a man, there's a picture here of him being birthed. Okay, there's Mem Noon, there's this theme, lining up with the labor. The barbecue grill has lines, like lines of instruction. The laver is a dish of water, like a womb. The second day of creation, back at the barbecue grill, he separated water from water. So there's this thing about coming in and separating. When you come into the kingdom, having chosen life, what do? You learn the constitution of the kingdom, the protocols. You separate. Well, we don't do this anymore. Well, we don't work on Saturday anymore because he said to rest on Saturday. Shabbat. People that are in the lunar Sabbath, that's a different thing. That's the right calendar. That's a whole other discussion, which can't debate here now. But the point is, deciding that he said to do it is one thing. Deciding that the Catholics said, hey, we changed it is another thing. And deciding now what's the true calendar is yet another thing, which I have some friends who believe that you go by the lunar Sabbath. They might be right. I don't know. I can't tell you they're wrong. The point is, having a heart to do what he said to do is what Mem and Nun represents. Kaf and Lamed, the barbecue grill, represents what he said, and Mem and Chet, coming into the Chet, represents just having chosen life. So these things that line up with the spring festivals, Mem Nun has to do with Shavuot, the third festival, which is 50 days of counting. It's like being pregnant, right? The womb, the ball of water, and the thing growing, conception, pregnancy, and birthing, all one event. Most people say there's two events. First day, you wave the sheaves that you cut. The 50th day, you lift up the 2 loaves, and they say they're 2 festivals. I believe that if you look close, you'll see it's one festival of 50 days. So that means it's not 4 festivals in the spring and 3 in the fall. It's actually 3 in the spring and 4 in the fall, which is like having a different set of teeth on key, which will open up a different door. The point is, If Shavuot is a 50-day festival lining up with Mem Nun, Mem is like being pregnant, Nun is like giving birth. The number Nun is the number 50. The number Mem is the number 40 in Hebrew. There's 40 weeks of gestation for a human. So things line up thematically deeper and deeper and deeper, and it all basically confirms in my estimation. So the point is, as the pattern goes, like look at the spring festivals, choose life. Oh, you can't just come barging in. You have to be decontaminated by the blood of the Messiah, acknowledging him. Then you can enter, learn the instructions, take them to heart as the seed planted within you, and you nurture, you tend, you learn, you have well favor towards Yahweh's instructions. And what births within you, like a woman being pregnant, births another soul. But what I've found is that what you're birthing is yourself unto eternity. The Nun, which is birthing inside your Mem, which is your own self, you yourself are the incubator for the eternal self developing by his seed growing within you. And when this mortal flesh falls off, that Nun within you is going to jump out unto eternity, taking on some new form of body. That's just the theme that I see in these letters, which seems to me to fit everything I've ever heard, New Testament or Old Testament combined. So you could say, well, why should I nurture this seed? Well, who's that growing inside of me? It's yourself. Tend it, because for eternity you will have as your condition, your disposition, as how you have tended his seed within you for this length of time. And those unfortunate few who never choose to tend his seed planted within them, their life will be doomed and cut short and not even developed. And those of us who, you might say, the benefit then of more years knowing his things is that, gee, we have more time to tend and incubate and develop and nurture and to do what? Well, then it goes into the fall feast. Samachai and Pei. Why are these three lining up with the white robes of righteousness, the white linen? These three out here, blue, purple, red, that's, to reiterate, choosing life, which is the kingdom of Yahweh, learning his instructions, and having a good attitude as you learn his instructions, tending them within you with a favorable disposition as a pregnant woman with her child, not seeking for the abortion. That's the spring festivals. And then the fall, Samachai and Pei, the menorah lining up with the day of blowing of trumpets. So the same way we blow a trumpet to, okay, perk our attention, let's listen. Let's herald his kingship. The menorah is lit. Here's the words of life, of truth, not out in the courtyard, not outside of the Mishkan, but in the set-apart place. Now this is the set-apart place. So those who first come into the Mishkan, spring festivals, choose life, study, and have a good attitude. That's represented by the spring feast. And you do that for a while. Then in the fall, over here in this other section, Yeshua said, I'm the vine and you're the branches, bear good fruit. That lines up with the Samach, the thing that looked like a mast of a ship. So after you've learned his ways for a while, then you're given a placement in his kingdom. That's why it lines up with day 4, where he put sun, moon, and stars in the sky. Jurisdiction, principality. Here's your job description. You want to be part of the kingdom? Go to work. Here, I'm going to plant you here, grow where you're planted, and produce fruit. That's what this is about. Participating in his kingdom, being the vine of his vineyard to bear fruit. It's not, here, let's sit around and wait for the rapture. Do what he said. Bear fruit. That's Samach. And in the song it says, Samachai and Pei, Shema, Shomer, together one. Shema means hear, believe, and do what you heard and what you believe. So I like to say, I hear I'm supposed to wear safety glasses using certain power tools. Do I believe it's true? Yeah. Do I know I can get my eye punched out if I don't wear them? Yeah. So then why don't I wear them? I'm too lazy. I'm an idiot. I just don't want to. So a lot of times I don't wear them. And I'm really lucky I still got my eyeballs, because stuff is, man, that stuff hit me there and there. And it's like, okay, I'll go get my glasses. Gosh, if I really shamad, I'd be wearing the safety glasses when I'm using certain power tools without even questioning or squabbling about it. What's the matter with me? Well, that's a silly little thing with safety glasses, and you can appropriate it back to these words. He said these words. Do we not believe him? Do we not really believe that these are words of life? When he said, which if a man do, he will live by them, speaking of the Torah instructions of the covenant, do we not think that he was telling us the truth? If he said, these words, these instructions are your life, your health, your wealth, your prosperity, your vibrant vitality, and it's your honor and dignity in the eyes of all your enemies. And we go, yeah, right. And we loathe, disdain, with disgust, considering them an abomination, and then we turn around and wonder why, as a culture, as the Christian cultural, Judeo-Christian, why is it that our enemies have no regard for us and are actually hate us and snarl and say we're going to take your heads off? Why? Because we did that to Yahweh's word, and he said what happens to us in the world events is a pattern of exactly what we have done to his word. And I can show you numerous verses where it says exactly that. If we are saying, well, Jay, why doesn't God protect us from the Muslims chopping our heads off? Because we cut his head off by disdaining his words of Torah. What do we think's going to happen? Well, gee, I didn't think it meant that. I thought it was nailed to the cross. Well, gee, guess what? If you had an enemy who said, let's see, the enemy reads these words and says, gosh, you know, if these guys come back to these words, I'm going down, I'm losing my position, and they get to be strengthened and exalted and lifted up. Well, then I better use my position as their enemy to get into the preacher's seat and tell them false words, lies, to keep them to disdain these words, so they stay down and I get to stay up. Isn't that a slick trick? And so, as you hear your preachers tell you, these words are done away with. These words don't matter. Why? Because the preacher needs to get his paycheck. Why does he need to get his paycheck? Because they set up the system that if he doesn't get his paycheck, he'll have to go out and pump grass or rake leaves or something he doesn't want to do. What I'm saying is that our whole culture has been designed over the many, many years so that these guys who are our own people turn around and feed us horse pucky. They feed us lies. They feed us what's otherwise, to use a scriptural term, dung. It's not true. The stuff they've been telling us is not true. But Yahweh's word says, read Deuteronomy 30. Deuteronomy 30. It's one of the clearest places where you can see what's really going on. So let me just ask a random question. Can you remember the last time you read Deuteronomy 30? Deuteronomy 30? Why should you read and read? And I tell this story to shame them. To shame them. My nephew went to a Christian college, I don't know which one, in Minnesota. And they said, we're going to study all the books of the Bible except Deuteronomy, Leviticus, and Numbers. The 3 books telling you Yahweh's heart of the Torah, the constitution with Israel, his covenant deal forever. And they said, oh, we're not going to talk about that. Why? Because they can muck around with everything else, or its history, but they can't mess around with the eternal covenant. Deuteronomy 30. It will be, hey, this is when, this is what we're talking about. It will be, I suggest this now, when all these things have come upon you, the blessing and the curse that I've presented before you, then it will be, when all these things have happened, then, hey, that's us now, because then you will take it to your heart. You will come back and consider, what is this word that he planted within us? You will take it to your heart among all the nations where Yahweh your Elohim has dispersed you. Okay, he's not talking to Jews in Israel. He's talking to the remnants of the people of Israel that got scattered because their forefathers, ancestors, generations ago got kicked out of the land, and he said he's going to scatter them across the face of the earth like dust in the wind. And here we are. So, we find ourselves having been scattered across the face of the earth. We can read in history about the blessing, usually the times of David and Hezekiah and a few other kings, and the curse, all the other guys that screwed up and went wrong and betrayed what he said and didn't believe what he said. And you will return to Yahweh your Elohim. You will return unto Yahweh your Elohim. Return, where have we been? We can look at Ezekiel 36:23 I mentioned earlier, if we have time to do that. And listen to his voice, according to everything I command you today, you and your children, with all your heart and all your soul. This is what he commanded us on that day. He didn't say, then you will remember everything that I told you in the New Testament after the Messiah shows up. He says, you will remember at that time everything I commanded you this day, back here, Deuteronomy 30. This is Moshe speaking just before he died. Then Yahweh your Elohim will bring back your captivity and have mercy upon you, as if he wasn't already. He wasn't having mercy upon us, so something of the status quo right now, regardless of your prayers, regardless of what you believe, regardless of the blessings we incur in the North American hemisphere, we are not experiencing the blessing that Yahweh wants to give us, that he would have given us, and that he will give us when we return to him. Something is going to look very different than it does right now, and we haven't got a clue what that is. We think, oh gee, everything's fine. Look, we got food, we got shelter, we got peace and safety. But there's something about the blessing Yahweh wants to give us which we haven't seen yet. Whatever he promised here, we haven't yet experienced it, and it supersedes, it's way beyond anything that we've ever read about in our history books. But we have to come back with all our soul. The interesting thing, you will return, and he will bring back your captivity. That word in Hebrew is spelled Shin Bet Tav. It's pronounced Shevet or Shabbat. The same word Shabbat is the word you will return, and I will release you from your captivity. Shabbat. It says, when it comes time that you will return, Shabbat, then I will release you from your captivity, Shabbat. When all these things have come upon you and decide to take it to your heart, Shabbat, that's the word. And I was looking at that and thinking, could it be that us sitting down and keeping Shabbat, not working, is the sign that we have returned? Why are we told not to come back to Shabbat? Who's telling us we don't have to worry about that Shabbat? Well, the Church of God and the Seventh-day Adventists and the Jews keep Shabbat. What about the rest of them? There's some Seventh-day Baptists. But it's like, no, we don't have to. If you think you don't have to, and if this says it will be when you guys decide to keep Shabbat, and I'm reading into it because of the spelling of the word, then it's not going to happen until we decide to do what he said. So, what if this whole time we're waiting for him? Oh, gee, that rapture is running a little late, don't you think? I mean, check the time schedule. Shouldn't it be here by now? I heard 1984, 1988, 1989, 2000. Whew, boy, he's running late. Or he's waiting for us to return so he can do what he said, and the rapture, if it does happen, it'll happen maybe at the end of another 1,000 years. After all, they thought it was going to happen 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago. What do we know? What if it's not for 1,000 years? What are we supposed to be doing? Sit down on Shabbat? Then Yahweh Elohim will bring back, that means release your captivity, and have mercy upon you. He will gather you in from all the peoples, mercy upon you. He has scattered you. If you're dispersed, will be at the ends of heaven, like an astronaut out on a spacewalk, maybe a colony on Mars. From there, Yahweh your Elohim will gather you in, and from there he will take you. Yahweh your Elohim will bring you to the land that your forefathers possessed, and you shall possess it. He will do good to you and make you more numerous, or you could say increase your regard of value, is the same meaning of that word, than your forefathers. Sorry, hasn't happened yet. The world cannot end, just so you know, the world cannot end yet because this hasn't happened. I remember hearing from a kid, hearing numerous preachers say, every prophecy that ever should have happened before Jesus returns has happened. Is this when Jesus returns? Yeah, that's how they qualify it. But if this doesn't say anything about him returning, this is what Yahweh is going to do for his people. This is a promise that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the Elohim of Israel, told Israel what he would do, and this hasn't happened yet. Some Jews have come back to the land, but this hasn't happened yet. So this can't be the end of the world. He will do good to you and make you more numerous than your forefathers, of a higher value of prestige. Yahweh Elohim will circumcise your heart and the heart of your offspring, generations following, to love Yahweh Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, that you may live. And, verse 7, Yahweh Elohim will place all these imprecations, which is the curses of the vow. Instead of being on Israel, now they're going to go under the enemy, the teeter-totter shifts, upon your enemies and those who hate you, who pursued you. Anybody pursuing the children of Israel these days? These curses that Yahweh has allowed or caused to be upon Israel for forsaking his covenant, this promises will be a turn back upon them. Has that happened yet? Sounds like they're getting stronger and stronger. You shall return, there's the word spelled Shabbat again, or Shuv anyway, and listen, that's the word Shema, to the voice of Yahweh, and perform all his commandments. If his commandments were nailed to the cross so that we don't have to do them, then this is made void. But this isn't made void, and if this is made void and I say that it isn't, then I'm a liar. But now you have to choose between me being a liar for reading these words and the preacher being the liar who's telling you these words are nailed to the cross, and what does he gain for telling you these are nailed to the cross? He represents a system that gets to stay up as our oppressors, and we get to be squashed under the feet of their dominion. And Yahweh says, if you return to these words, I will raise you up, and you will have dominion, and those other guys are going down. They don't want to go down any more than we do. But we're going like, okay. No, not okay. We have to return to these words, do what he said, he will raise us up, and those guys are going down. So then you have to say, anybody who contradicts these words is lying. Period. No matter what the excuse, whether you need a job or not. Oh, gee, you want me to lose my job? If you're a preacher and you need to lose your job to quit lying, you better quit lying and lose your job, because Yeshua said anybody who preaches falsehood has no place in my kingdom. His words in the book of Revelation. No place in the kingdom. That's eternal. Or maybe it's temporal and eternal, or, you know, but those are serious words. Yahweh will return to rejoice over you for good. Yahweh wants to rejoice over us being his people and him being our Elohim. He is looking forward to this occasion. This is not us trying to make him do something or painting him to be some deity that is not. This is him expressing, saying, man, I got all kinds of great plans. You guys will be the head and not the tail. You guys will be blessed and not cursed. All your enemies will be afraid of you, and I'm going to kick the bejeebers out of those guys that have been kicking you around for century after century after century. As he rejoiced over your forefathers. When, conditional, verse 10, when you listen to the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to observe his commandments and his decrees. Well, the Holy Spirit might have told you you didn't need to listen to his commandments and decrees, but then you're listening to a lying Holy Spirit, which means it's an unholy spirit, which means there's a demon dressed up in party clothes with a name tag that says, hello, my name is the Holy Spirit. But it's not true. Any spirit which contradicts these words is not the Ruach HaKodesh. But that means I have to hold these words sacred, and the testimony of any other spirit or the testimony of any other Christ as being suspicious, only validated if they line up with these words. This is a critical consideration. Yes.
Well, I was just thinking where it says he'll come as an angel of light, but all we've been taught all our life is he's this evil, demonic thing, and nobody thinks of him coming as an angel of light. And it will seem like light. They will think it's the Holy Spirit.
Yahweh says there's coming a time when, if it were possible, even the very elect would be deceived. Okay, if it were possible for the elect would be deceived, then it's got to look pretty good. It's got to look just like it was Yahweh himself. In which case, what mechanism do and again, Calvinist Presbyterianism has a different definition of what the very elect means. The word in Hebrew is bachar, bet kaf, bet chet resh. The word Bacardi means I have chosen. It's easy to remember, like the rum, Bacardi. It's like Bacardi rum, top shelf. Hey, I have chosen Bacardi rum. The word Bachar tea, literally, I was reading the word and saying, what is this word I've chosen? Oh, bet chet resh, tav yod, Bacharti, Bacardi. Oh, I have chosen is the word Bacardi. Okay, so if you could say, well, the very elect would be deceived. Is that we have chosen him? Is that he has chosen us? The word Bachar, if you look at it, means somebody like a military man like a Navy SEAL or Delta Force, or somebody who's the elite troops who are well-trained and diligent. It happens to be the same word, in a sense, as Aleph Mem Nun. We think, oh, Aleph Mem Nun means amen, so be it. But Aleph Mem Nun also means artist, specialist, workman, skilled, one who can be trusted. It means yes, truly, certainly so. With the same confidence you sit in the chair, with the same confidence we stand in this building with this great expanse overhead that could fall in on us. No, we trusted. That's the word Aleph Mem Nun, amen. So you could say by the same confidence that a trained warrior can be equipped with weapons and he's not going to shoot his foot off by pulling the trigger at the wrong time and he's going to hit the target instead of the person next. This trained, diligent, he always says, this is my chosen. So too, who are the elect? Perhaps those who have chosen to Sinai, to diligently study Yahweh's words and to know Yahweh's identity, so that if a false Christ stood up and said, hey, I'm Jesus, and the other guy says, hey, I'm Yeshua, and another guy says, hey, I'm Isu, and it's like, okay, all you guys, if you're going to apply a test to find out which one of these Christ figures is the true Messiah, what would you use? Such that if there was a time coming when the very elect, the really ones that are diligently trying to determine the truth, might be deceived, what mechanism do you think that he gave us would, if we applied it, make us know whether we got the right Messiah or not? What do you think?
Gold
The gold standard? Who has the gold wins? That standard?
Hebrew.
Oh, the Hebrew standard.
And Aleph.
What do you think?
Torah.
What about the Torah?
Oh, if he says you keep the Torah.
Okay, well, Jesus Christ and his followers say you don't keep the Torah. So is that the true Christ? Is that the true Messiah?
No.
If the standard, so here's the thing. If I say the whole Aleph Bet is the standard, okay? Right here, Kaf and Lamed represent the Torah. So in my thinking, the true Messiah has to validate, authenticate, corroborate, and teach and learn and tell his taught ones to teach and learn the Torah. And therefore, if Jesus Christ represents the ideology of those who say, it's nailed on the cross, we don't need it. And if we did do it, that would be sin, which means we're not going to do it, we're going to run from it. It's like, it's not the same guy. Invalid then. Okay, you raised your hand?
I was just going to say the fourth commandment,
The fourth commandment, which is
to distinguish who's telling the truth.
to distinguish who's telling the truth, which is what?
Yeshua, Jesus, and Esau.
And so what would, I'm going to just say, just for the sake of everybody's benefit.
So I'm trying to answer your question as to what is the sign,
Okay, what is the sign by which you can tell whether we have the right Messiah is,
the fourth commandment,
which is,
the Sabbath, the Holy Being, and the Shemitah.
okay, but there are some people who hold to the Christian ideology which keep the Sabbath day and even the festivals. But they hold to Christian ideology, so it can't be just the seventh day Sabbath or just the Moedim. What I'm saying is that we have to know him, and then you can say, yeah, I do know him, and he's different than what you say. If there was going to be something we could apply by which even the very elect wouldn't be deceived, my thinking is that not only does it have to be something along those lines, but then I have to sit there and say, did he tell us anything about it? Did he give us any kind of parable where some people all get together and they all think they believe the same thing, and yet when the pertinent time comes, some of the people are kicked out? 10 virgins. Okay, tell you what, let's look at that. What does the oil represent of the 10 virgins? Now, after all, they all had hope, they all had faith, they all might have had the seventh day in the festivals. Let's say they all had the same expectation of being the bride of Christ and going into the marriage supper, and they all fell asleep, and then when the bridegroom came, 5 got in, 5 didn't. Yes?
My opinion is to walk out obedience to Christianity, you should come into the understanding of the fact that you cannot continue to the law and that you can't focus on yourself because you're corrupted. Therefore, you should focus on God, and that's the proper relationship that we intend for us, and that's the place where you will the knowledge of Him and how to have trust in Him is supposed to be. And people that don't find that, they're not going to be able to understand the trials of the last days.
I want to, just to see whether I heard what you're saying, I'll try to repeat. but I didn't quite grab it. It's a little bit vague. So maybe you could repeat it again. I can't quite reiterate to you.
If you're a Christian, it is obedience. It is obedience to the law, right? And we can't dismiss that.
Wait a minute, say that again. I'm trying to hear what you're saying.
Okay. If you're a Christian, it's about being obedient to the law.
If you are a Christian,
Yeah.
you're supposed to be obedient to the law?
Yeah, some people will dismiss that and say, well, it's all forgiven. But it is about the excruciating minutia of obedience.
Okay, so you're saying that in reality, regardless of what some Christian doctrines teach, that you don't have to pay attention to the law, really, if you're a Christian, you're supposed to obey the law.
You obey the law, but that'll take you to a different place of understanding.
Okay.
In which you understand, I can't focus on obedience or legalism because I can't focus on myself.
You can't focus on obedience or legalism because that would be focusing on yourself. So what you have to do is focus on Him.
And it's a different reality that you come into, trusting in God.
Okay,
You'll
so
find that.
I think what you're saying is that if you focus on trying to keep His instructions, that's focusing on yourself, which we shouldn't really do. So therefore, you should focus on believing in Him or trusting in Him. No?
Be obedient to have faith in Him is to first be obedient, but that should take you to a different place where you understand you cannot hold to that command, that law because you're corrupted. Therefore, in that place of failure to attain to that standard, as in my experience, you come into a different place of belief that you should focus on God and not yourself when you're corrupted, and a different type of behavior toward the law.
And you're suggesting that that type of understanding where you, and again, I'm not trying to evaluate what you're saying is right or wrong, I'm trying to reiterate. If I can't reiterate, it means I don't comprehend it, right? So you keep the instructions of the law to come to the place of knowing Him, and then you trust in Him to the point where you stop looking at the law because it's not about you, it's about Him.
You still respect the law, but when trying to obey the law would require that you, again, focus on yourself and trying to discipline yourself in that behavior. You come to an understanding that I should not do that anymore, and the belief that I should be with God. To stay focused on Him, but even remaining that focus, you need that to Him, even that. And you cannot do anything else.
Okay, this reminds me of a certain teaching I remember hearing where it says the law was given to us as a school teacher, as it were, to bring us to Him, and then once we come to Him, we don't look at the law so much, but we look at Him and His favor and His grace by which we are found to be acceptable because of His blood, right?
And we just live what's in our heart. We still have the law in our heart, we still respect that. When we are trying to, well, when we're living our life and we find ourselves focusing on ourselves, that's not a good place to be. We understand that, so.
Okay, so basically, I think I understand what you're saying. And again, I can think I understand, but if I can't tell you what I heard you say, and if you tell me, yes, that's what I said, that means there was a disconnect in communication I didn't understand. But I think what you're saying is what I remember learning, and I'll just say it again, just to say, we hear the law, we're confronted with our sin because we don't measure up. So we turn to Him, and then He says, now that I've got your attention, don't even really pay much attention to the law. Honor the law in your heart, but better you should look to me, have a relationship to me, and realize I've forgiven you and I've covered you with my blood, and that's part school. So now work on the relationship and don't so much pay attention to looking at the law, because if you